the floor's wet again. You mop it with rags that used to be your clothes. The priest says the goddess loves purity. Funny how she never does the cleaning herself. Incense burns your lungs till you cough black. The smell of divine devotion, they call it. You call it choking on other people's faith. Statues tower above you, polished marble, perfect smiles. They get washed with oil and wine. You get washed with rain if it ever bothers to fall. The offerings arrive. Golden bowls, sweet figs, fat lambs. You touch none of it. You just haul it, polish it, bleed for it. The gods eat better than their servants, and the priests eat better than both. The bell rings. You kneel. You always kneel. Even when your knees split, even when the stone bites back. Someone drops a jug. It shatters. Silence. Then the slap. Not at you, but close enough to remind you what happens when you forget your place. You used to think you served the divine. Then you realized what you really serve. Men in robes with clean hands. You're not a believer. You're a temple servant. And the cruelest part? You still bow when they pass. Life here runs on rules. You don't write them. You just survive them. Rule number 1, wake before the sun. Because the gods apparently need you half dead to hear their prayers. You scrub the marble floors till your reflection shows, then keep scrubbing till it disappears again. The priest says it's about discipline. You say it's about pretending dirt can't touch holiness. Rule number 2, don't speak unless spoken to. Words are for the ones with robes. You're just background noise. When you cough, they call it a disturbance. When they chant, it's sacred. Rule number 3, never look the statue in the eyes. They say it's disrespectful. Truth is, you might start wondering why a block of stone gets more food and praise than you ever will. Every movement's timed. The bell rings, you move. The incense burns, you kneel. The chant ends, you clean again. Even your breathing feels scheduled, in between orders. The Neokoros walks past, keyring clinking, the sound of permission. You bow lower. Those keys could open every door in the temple, but not one of them leads outside. You carry the offerings up the steps. Figs rotting sweet in the sun. Lamb blood sticky between your fingers. The smell clings. You've tried washing it off. It doesn't go. At noon, heat turns the courtyard into a furnace. You fetch water you're not allowed to drink first. The gods before the hands, they say. You watch priests pour libations of clean wine while your throat burns dry. The irony's thick enough to choke on. Rule number 4, never question. Questions are dangerous. They make you think there's a way out. You've heard the older servants whisper that being here is an honour chosen by fate. Maybe that's true, but fate's a bastard with a cruel sense of humour. Sometimes at night, you stare at the flicker of the temple lamps and think, what if the gods are just as blind as their statues? Maybe that's why they need servants, to suffer on their behalf. And the worst part? The rules work. They hollow you out, polish the emptiness, make obedience feel natural. By dawn, you don't need orders anymore. You already kneel. The days blur together here. Sunrise doesn't wake you, the bell does. The same metallic scream every morning, cutting through the dark before you even remember your own name. You roll off a straw mat that smells like sweat, smoke and mildew. Your back cracks, but no one's listening. No one ever is. You share the servants' quarters with 6 others. No windows, just a slit in the wall pretending to be one. The air inside doesn't move. It hangs, thick, sour, alive. Someone's already coughing. Someone else muttering a prayer. You gave up on those. The gods never answer servants, only those who can afford silence. You pull on your tunic, stiff with yesterday's dirt, and step out into the cold corridor. The floor shocks your bare feet awake. A priest passes, his robe whispering clean fabric. He doesn't look at you. You're invisible by design. That's how holiness works here. It feeds on blindness. First duty, fire. The sacred flame must never die. Sounds noble, right? Until you're the one tending it at dawn, eyes stinging from smoke, hands black with soot. The priest calls it purification. You call it slow suffocation. The air burns your lungs, the heat peels your skin, but you keep the flame alive because the gods apparently can't light their own damn candles. Then comes the cleaning, always the cleaning. Every statue, every altar, every slab of marble, washed, polished, wiped again. You scrape pigeon droppings off Athena's face and call it devotion. You scrub bloodstains from the last sacrifice because purity pleases the divine. You wonder if the gods can tell human blood from animal. You hope they can't. By mid-morning, the temple starts breathing. Footsteps, chanting, commands. You move like a shadow between bodies. The worshippers file in, their sandals dusting the floors you just cleaned. You don't sigh. You've learned sighing gets you extra chores. The neo-chorus watches from the stairs, key ring clinking like a reminder. He's the closest thing to power you'll ever see, a servant of the priests, but still above you. He holds the temple keys like trophies, each one shining, each one proof that he's less trapped than you are, but not by much. You wonder if he remembers what it felt like to kneel. Probably not. Power makes people forget their knees. Next, preparation for sacrifice. You fetch the water, the knives, the baskets of barley. You know the steps by heart. Wash the beast, calm it, pretend it's mercy. The priest raises the blade and prays. You hold the rope tight enough to feel it tremble. The animal thrashes once, twice, and then it's still. Warm blood spills over your hands, down your wrists. You flinch the first few weeks. You don't anymore. You carry the carcass away, feet slipping in the muck, sweat stinging your eyes. The smell sticks to you, iron, fat, death. You'll smell like this till nightfall when you lie down beside it again in the airless dark. The priests eat first, of course, the divine portion. You watch them carve the roasted meat, dip it in wine, talk of omens and virtue. Then they scrape the bones clean, toss the leftovers to you like charity. You're told it's a blessing. You've learned that blessings taste a lot like grease and ash. By noon, your arms ache, your stomach's empty, your skin itches from soot. Still, the work doesn't stop. There's the courtyard to sweep, the offerings to stack, the torches to refill. You move on instinct, lift, scrub, bow, repeat. If you slow down, the overseer's stick reminds you that holiness demands efficiency. You hear the temple musicians playing in the distance, flutes, lyres, voices that sound too soft for this world. It's almost beautiful, until you remember they're playing for the gods, not for you. You're just background labor, a smudge behind the song. A rich woman passes through, offering gold and honey. She doesn't look at you either. Her eyes are fixed on the statue, mouth whispering something about gratitude. Gratitude for what, you wonder? For a life where others kneel so she can feel holy. Afternoon brings the heat. The marble burns through your soles. You fetch water from the basin again, carrying it up the long steps to the inner chamber. Your arms tremble halfway, but you don't dare spill. The last person who did spent 3 days scrubbing the courtyard stones with a reed brush. You still remember the sound of it, scraping skin against rock until the blood mixed with the dust. The Neokoros passes again, checking the lamps. He says faster, always faster. You nod, though your body's already running on fumes. He doesn't care. None of them do. Devotion's a fine excuse for exploitation. Always has been. Evening arrives, but it doesn't bring rest. The festival processions begin. You haul garlands and incense baskets through crowds that smell of sweat and wine. The priests lead chants, faces glowing in torchlight, their voices raised to Olympus. You echo the words without meaning them. You used to think saying the names of gods gave you protection. Now it just feels like giving them power they don't deserve. Children throw petals as the statue passes by. You catch one in your hair, a small, bright thing, and crush it without thinking. Beauty doesn't last here. Nothing soft does. After the ceremony, you clean again. Always cleaning. The marble floors shimmer with spilled oil and blood, and your knees are raw from scrubbing. You see the reflection of torches dancing across the wet surface, and almost laugh. Even the floor gets to look divine. You hear the priests laughing in the distance, talking about omens, feasts, favours from the city. You think of how many backs it takes to build their holiness. You've lost count. Maybe that's the point. A rat scurries past, bold as a priest. You envy it for a second. It eats freely, sleeps where it wants. The temple might crush you, but the rats, they thrive. If the gods notice, they don't seem offended. Night drags in slow. You light the last lamps, close the great bronze doors. The sound echoes, heavy, final. You feel the day sink into your bones. You lean against the wall and stare at the goddess statue one last time. Her eyes are blank, her smile's perfect. Someone chiseled eternity into her face. You wonder if she ever looks back. Then you laugh, quiet, bitter. Of course she doesn't. She's stone, like the priests, like the system. Cold, perfect, untouchable. You're the only thing here that bleeds.
You return to the servants' quarters, where the air's still thick and sour. A bowl of barley mush waits, hard, cold, tasteless. You eat it anyway. Hunger doesn't care about flavour. Someone's praying again. You almost feel sorry for them. Faith's the only luxury cheaper than food. You lie down on the straw, stare into the dark, and listen to the sound of breathing. Tired, uneven, human. You think of all the days still ahead. The same bell, the same smoke, the same silence. You used to dream of escape. Now you dream of shorter days. Because the truth is simple and cruel. This isn't punishment anymore. It's routine. And the worst part? You've started to call it normal. When the festivals come, you'd think it'd be your one chance at joy. Trumpets, garlands, gold, the city glittering in the name of the gods. But no, for temple servants, festivals are just another word for exhaustion wearing perfume. You start before dawn, hauling baskets of offerings that feel heavier with every step. Grapes, figs, honey cakes, all headed straight to the altar, none to your mouth. You can smell the roasted meat rising from the sacrificial fire, feel it sting your empty stomach. The priests feast later. You clean what's left of their crumbs. If you're lucky, a half-burnt fig falls your way. The gods apparently love their meals well done. Crowds pour in from every corner of the polis. Merchants pretending to be devout, aristocrats showing off silk robes they didn't pay for themselves, and half-drunk men who think shouting prayers louder makes them holier. You weave through the chaos, invisible. No one sees the servant sweating under the garland weight, or the one wiping blood off the marble steps. It's always about the spectacle. The gods love a show, and humans love pretending they're the audience. And there you are, stagehand to divine theatre, faceless, voiceless, disposable. By midday, your back aches like it's cracking under Olympus itself. The priestess calls out, demanding more oil for the lamps. You sprint across the courtyard, praying not to slip, because the last one who dropped an offering jar spent 3 days scrubbing pigeon filth from the temple roof. A lesson in humility, they called it. Right. Nothing humbles a soul like bird droppings and sunstroke. The drums start, the signal for procession. You fall in line, holding the banner of the god whose name you can barely whisper. Your arms tremble, your legs burn, but you keep walking, not because of faith, that ran out long ago, but because stopping means punishment. The temple doesn't tolerate the luxury of weakness. Then comes the sacrifice. You've seen it too many times to be moved by it anymore. The lamb bleats, the blade flashes, and blood paints the altar red. The priest chants something about purity, while your job is to mop up the filth. They say the gods demand beauty. Funny how much ugliness it takes to make it happen. As the smoke rises, so does the noise. Cheers, songs, prayers shouted to the heavens. You glance at the sky, wondering if anyone up there's actually listening. Probably not. If the gods did care, you'd think they'd start by giving their servants sandals that aren't falling apart. Evening falls, and the temple gleams under the torchlight. The priests dine in the inner chamber, the laughter echoing through the marble halls. You sit outside, too tired to move, watching the shadows of luxury dance across the walls. You can almost taste the wine in the air, sweet, rich, forbidden. Then the near chorus appears, his voice sharp as a chisel. The altars must be cleansed. Of course they must. Everything sacred needs polishing. Everything human needs silence. You drag yourself back to the steps, scrubbing away the remains of the day, ashes, oil, blood, until the marble shines again, as if none of it ever happened. When it's finally done, you sit alone by the temple gate. The city sleeps. The moonlight catches on the columns, turning them ghost pale. For a moment, you almost admire it, the beauty, the order, the illusion of perfection. Then you remember who keeps it that way. You, the servant, the one too unholy to touch the gods, but too useful to dismiss. They'll say your work honors Olympus. You know better. It feeds the same machine that crushes the ones keeping it running. Tomorrow will be the same. Prayers, chores, silence. Because here, holiness doesn't save you, it just demands more of your labor. And somehow, you'll give it. Not out of faith, not even fear, just habit, the kind that chains tighter than iron. Night falls, and the temple quiets, or pretends to. You'd think after a day of chanting, sacrificing, and pretending the gods care, someone would let the servants rest. But no. The gods may sleep, the priests may feast, but you mop the bloodstains out of marble cracks until your hands smell like iron and incense.
The torchlight flickers across the floor, making shadows dance like they're mocking you. You can almost hear them whisper, "You missed the spot." You scrub harder. Maybe if you polish the floor enough, the gods will finally see you reflected in it. Though knowing them, they'd probably complain about the streaks. Every temple has its rhythm and its hierarchy, carved deeper than the columns. The priests talk about piety, but their robes smell of perfume and arrogance. They speak of purity while tossing bones to stray dogs. You, on the other hand, can't even sneeze near the altar without being told your breath offends the gods. You've seen it all. The priestess who claims divine visions after too much wine. The high priest who pockets half the silver offerings for temple maintenance. The noble women who waltz in barefoot, pretending humility, then tiptoe out with stolen votive rings. And through it all, there's you, the servant, the convenient nobody who keeps the lies from falling apart. Morning comes again before you realise it. Sleep is a rumour in this place. The first bell rings, dragging you back to the same dance. You light the lamps, sweep the courtyard, and pray your broom doesn't break. Not because of the gods, but because replacements are a luxury not granted to the unholy. The neo-chorus strolls in, keyring jingling like he owns Olympus itself. His smile is the kind that says, "I have power, and I know exactly how little you have." He checks your work, not to help, but to find something wrong. There's always something wrong. A speck of dust, a crooked torch, a fig leaf out of place. The gods see everything. Funny, they never seem to see him pocketing offerings. By midday, the heat claws at your skin. The marble floor burns through your sandals, the air thick with incense and hypocrisy. You carry jars up the steps, your shoulders trembling. The priests chant behind you, slow, pompous, like men who've never lifted anything heavier than their egos. Then comes the oracle procession, the city's grand show of devotion.
Trumpets blare, banners wave, and the crowd gathers like moths to divine flame. You're the one keeping the torches lit, the path clean, the idols polished. No one claps for that. They only see the glow, never the burned hands behind it.
During the prayers, a priest drops his amphora. You're there before it shatters, catching it mid-fall. He doesn't thank you. He doesn't even look at you. Careful, he says, as if you were the one who almost failed the gods. You bow, swallow your pride, and wonder if divine patience means letting fools wear laurel crowns. By the time the crowd disperses, you're too tired to stand. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and half-eaten offerings. You collect the leftovers, not for yourself, that would be sacrilege, but to throw them into the sacred pit where no unclean hand must linger. You do it anyway, because someone has to. Sometimes you wonder if the gods laugh at you, not mockingly, but amused like a child watching ants build a temple from dust. Maybe that's what you are here, dust with a duty. The priests call you necessary. That's their polite way of saying replaceable. And yet in the quiet after the rituals, when the last lamp flickers and the marble cools, something strange happens. You look up at the statues towering above, Zeus, Athena, Apollo, all carved to perfection, all frozen in eternal glory. You think about how many hands like yours scrubbed, lifted, built them, how much human suffering got smoothed out into those godlike smiles. Maybe that's the real miracle, not divine power, but human endurance disguised as devotion. The temple doesn't honor the weak, but it runs on them. Every spotless floor, every shining altar, every perfumed prayer owes its existence to the backs that bent and broke in silence. The priests might preach eternity, but it's the servants who keep time moving, one chore, one humiliation, one heartbeat at a time. And still, tomorrow you'll wait before dawn again. You'll wash the marble, light the fire, bow at the altar. Not because you believe anymore, that faith died somewhere between the third and fourth bucket of blood, but because habit is stronger than hope. You've learned the secret truth of the temples. Holiness is just another kind of hunger. The gods consume devotion. The priests consume the offerings. And you're what's left at the bottom of the bowl. And yet, you keep going. Because quitting isn't allowed. Because somewhere deep down under the ash and fatigue there's a tiny bitter spark, the kind that doesn't worship anymore, but still refuses to go out. You may never see the gods, but they'll always see your work. Not that it matters. You weren't meant to be remembered, only replaced. Welcome to temple life. Holiness for them. You ever wonder what happens when the gods get bored? They invent you. A temple servant, half human, half mop. Full-time decoration in the grand pageant of divine order. Congratulations. You exist so marble columns don't feel lonely. By now, the routine is tattooed into your bones. Wake up, pretend you slept, drag yourself across the courtyard like a half-crushed beetle. The sun isn't even up yet, but somehow you're already late. The priests say, the gods rise early. Of course they do. They don't have to carry water jars the size of small children. First task, sweep. Again. Because apparently marble attracts dust faster than the priests attract self-importance. You sweep under the statue of Athena, who stares past you like you're a stain she's too polite to notice. Maybe she's judging your technique. Maybe she's just bored. Hard to tell. She hasn't blinked in a few centuries. Then comes the ritual preparation. Candles, oils, incense. You're told not to spill a drop because every offering is sacred. Right. Sacred enough that when it falls you get blamed, not the drunk priest who tripped over his own robe. A lesson in care, they call it. Sure, if by care they mean fear and unpaid overtime. You'd think after years of worship you'd get used to it. The endless kneeling, the mindless praise, the constant pretending that suffering is holy. But no, every day's a new reminder that the gods love hierarchy. They sit up there, marble-faced and smug, while you break your back, making sure their altars don't look tired. And the priests? Oh, the priests, the self-appointed middlemen of the heavens. They float through the halls like swans, robes flowing, voices dripping with honeyed hypocrisy. Serve with joy, they say, smiling like they invented morality. You'd laugh if your mouth wasn't too dry. They love to preach about purity, these men who haven't cleaned a floor in their lives. They'll spend hours lecturing about inner peace while you're scrubbing dried lamb fat from the sacred tiles. Peace apparently smells like rot and incense. At midday, the temple bells ring. Your cue to feed the flames, polish the offerings, and bow till your spine hums. The neo-chorus strolls by again, jingling those damn keys like some divine jailer. He likes to say, "Order keeps us close to the gods." You want to ask if that's why he locks the storeroom with the best wine. But you don't. You bow, because sarcasm here is a punishable art form.
Evening the temple gleams, spotless, majestic, perfect. The priests praise the gods for their beauty. Not a single one thanks the hands that made it happen. But that's the game. The gods get the glory, the priests get the credit, and you get more work. When night finally creeps in, you sit on the steps, sore enough to mistake stillness for comfort. You look up at the stars, those same lights the poets say are the eyes of the gods. You snort. If the gods are watching, they've got a sick sense of humour, watching you scrub their altars till your knuckles bleed, all while they bask in your sweat like it's a hymn. The truth? You've stopped believing they ever cared. The marble smiles, the golden idols, the rituals, it's all theatre. The audience claps, the actors preen, and the stagehands, you, vanish into the shadows when the curtain falls. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Because the temple doesn't need believers, it needs bodies. And you, unfortunate masterpiece of exhaustion, are exactly that. A body that won't quit. A servant who can't break. A devotion machine, powered by humiliation and routine. The gods might call it faith. You call it survival with better lighting. They say the temple is eternal, built to outlast empires, storms, and men. Funny, considering it's falling apart faster than you are. The marble's cracked, the gold's flaking, and the statues lean like they've had enough of pretending to be divine. Still, you're told to preserve the sanctity. Sure, let's polish the ruins and call it holiness. Every morning the priests strut in like roosters in silk. They talk about order, about tradition, about honouring the gods. You'd almost admire the confidence if it weren't glued together with delusion. These are men who can't tell a broom from a staff of office, yet they'll lecture you on proper maintenance. You nod, you bow, you scrub, because that's your role in this grand joke, the human punctuation mark at the end of every self-important sermon. You've seen this temple through droughts, floods, and the occasional idiot noble trying to buy his way into Olympus. You've seen priests replaced, statues toppled, altars rebuilt, but the labour never changes. The gods get new paint, the servants get new blisters.
Sometimes travellers wander in, wide-eyed and reverent, whispering, "How magnificent!" You want to laugh. Magnificent? Sure, if you like the smell of old smoke, sweat, and denial. They toss coins into the basin, thinking the gods will hear. You're the one who collects them later, pretending not to notice how many go missing between the offering plate and the treasury. By night, the temple grows quiet, that kind of heavy, ancient silence that sounds like judgment. You sit on the steps, back against the cold stone, and think, what a masterpiece of irony. Humans break their bodies to glorify gods carved from rock. You clean statues that will never thank you, light fires that burn out before dawn, and call it devotion. And for what? The gods don't bless you, the priests don't remember your name, but the temple stands because you keep it standing. Not out of faith, not out of love, but because someone has to keep the illusion breathing. Maybe that's your true purpose.
to make their divinity believable by staying invisible. A silent guarantee that the holy never gets its hands dirty. So yes, the temple will last forever, as long as you keep scrubbing